Me and my friends saw a full-body apparition similar to the Grim Reaper that we named Danny. Danny appeared on our neighborhood street in November 2010. I was 10 years old. My brother was 8. And my other friends were 9 and 12. We were riding our bikes up and down the street, enjoying our last minutes of daylight, when we spotted what appeared to be a black, cloaked figure pacing back and forth across the road. At first it was hunched over and we thought it was an animal, but you could tell it was wearing a cloak by the way the fabric moved as it walked. We watched as a car passed by it. As soon as the car headlights touched the figure, sprang to the side of the road and sat there in the darkness, stooping low to the ground. Then resumed its pacing when the car was gone. We were both frightened and curious. I ran to my mom about the mysterious stranger, and she came out and looked down the road and told us she didn't see anything. This only made us more determined to find out what was going on. We hopped on our bikes and went to check it out. Kaylee, the oldest, went first, with us younger kids trailing behind her just in case it would start chasing us. I don't remember my thoughts as we approached it. I was more fascinated than scared. I didn't believe in ghosts and was counting on my older friend to protect us. When we were about 5 feet from it, we stopped. By now it had paused its relentless pacing and was standing silently in the middle of the road, watching us. It was a man, about 5'5", dressed in a floor-length black cloak with a hood. The sleeves of the cloak were long and hid his hands, and his face was hidden in the darkness of the hood. He looked like the Grim Reaper without a scythe. At first a thought crossed my mind that he was one of the neighbors. Halloween was a month ago, and what neighbor would still be outside on a chilly November evening pacing across the road? And besides, there was something off about the man that I couldn't place. Something inhuman. He wasn't see-through like you would think a ghost would be. He was solid and appeared almost as a real person, except that there was something about the way he stood silently in the road staring at us. Something in the way he moved made it obvious that he wasn't a part of this world. Kaylee stepped forward. "Who are you?" she asked. The man did not reply, but his head shifted towards her slightly, and it was obvious he was aware of us. Then his whole body shifted as if he was going to walk forward, and Kaylee turned her bike around, screamed at us to run, and began pedaling away at top speed. I instantly fled back up the street towards home, too scared to notice if it was chasing us. Kaylee was a rational kid for her age. She never got scared of anything, but as she ran past me, I saw her look back at the man, and she had an expression of terror on her face. Once we reached home, we looked back to see if it had followed us, but it had vanished. We didn't go back outside that night, and walked each other home. Years later, there are so many unanswered questions that me and my friends still discuss. Who was he? Where did he come from? Our neighborhood was surrounded by a forest and a metal fence, and there was only one entrance. And we had been playing in the street all day and hadn't seen any strangers pass through. Why wasn't my mom able to see it? We have nicknamed the encounter Danny, because when we talk about the incident, people think we are crazy if we say ghost or shadow man. Indeed, if I myself had seen Danny alone, I would have written it off as my imagination. But the fact that 3 other people saw it at the same time, including Kaylee, who used to make fun of people who believed in the paranormal, is proof to me that we didn't just make it up. At night, the memory of Danny and his cloak makes me shiver, and I lie awake and think how I am probably one of the only people on this planet who knows 100% that the supernatural is real, because we stood in front of it and spoke to something that was not only present in our reality, but aware of us. I wish I had proof, a video or a photo, but it was 2010 and we were kids who didn't have cameras or iPhones. I am not even sure if other people could see it. No other neighbor reported anything strange, and my mother still claims to this day that she saw nothing when she looked down the road. I have 2 theories. that Danny was indeed the angel of death as described in the Bible, walking the earth to claim lost souls, and that Danny was a demon or lost soul himself, who had been summoned by a cult into our reality, and had been trapped in the physical world. Our neighborhood, Long Branch, Washington, had been lawless up until 1918, and was famous for its cults and shady characters, especially in the 70s. People who were in trouble with the law often lived there in secrecy and isolation. After we saw Danny, a neighbor killed himself and his body wasn't discovered until a week later, and another was brutally beaten to death with a chair while he lay in a coma at a local hospital. My guess is that someone messed with something they didn't understand. And the result was Danny, left to wander the dark woods forever, cursing the neighborhood with his presence. We haven't seen him since. Although odd deaths continue to plague our old neighborhood, I will never touch a Ouija board, or even hold tarot cards because of what happened. For me, the supernatural is too real and too close, and not something I want to ever experience again. Does anyone have an explanation for these strange occurrences? A few years ago, my best friend died. We were on bad terms at the time. I didn't realize it at the time, but his disease had taken his mind. Apparently on his deathbed, he was hallucinating and laughing and talking to me like I was in the room. About a year later, I had a dream he called me on the phone. It was so realistic. We were catching up on my past year and joking around. I suddenly realized and asked, "Hey, aren't you dead?" There was this loud screech on the phone and I woke up. I knew I was dreaming, but it felt so real. When I was 20 years old, I went to my bathroom. It was the middle of the day. I turned to look at the mirror, but my reflection turned its back. I was facing the mirror wall, looking at the back of my head. I was so confused and startled that I left and was afraid to look at a mirror for the rest of the day. No psych history, no drugs or alcohol. I have no explanation. Throughout my lifetime, I have heard 3 knocks on the door or wall. It's not a common occurrence, usually late at night or early in the morning. I'm wide awake when it happens. When I investigated, I found nothing, no clue. When I was in my early 20s, I was trying to sleep on the couch with my girlfriend at her parents' house. I was nowhere near tired. I had my eyes closed and had the overwhelming sensation someone was standing over me. It was intense. I figured it was one of her parents. I turned my head and opened my eyes, and there was this old woman whom I've never seen before. She looked about 80 years old. My heart dropped, and the old woman looked shocked as she ducked beneath the couch. I sat up and reached over the couch to find nothing. I was camping with a buddy in the high Sierras by a lake. I was trying to sleep on bare ground with my head uphill. Bright full moon so you could see without a flashlight. I had this faint pulsing sensation starting at my head, move down to my left, and stop at my feet. Now it was intense. I was convinced nothing was there, but would sit up to look and put my mind at ease. I did, and there was a huge mule deer with a giant rack right at my feet. I screamed, "Oh shit," and the deer stood on his hind legs and ran off. Freaked me out that something was actually there. I think I am being followed by a ghost/spirit help. My mother died when I was 9 in a car accident caused by a drunk driver. Me and my older sister Kay moved in with my father, and my 2 younger sisters moved in with my stepfather. I want to start this by saying I truly don't believe it's my mother that is doing the haunting, and this is all caused by my own stupidity, but now I don't know what to do. When I was a senior in high school, we moved into a tiny 3-bedroom house. It had a creepy basement with no outside entrance, but on the outside of the door was a chain lock right above the doorknob, which made no sense. Right off the basement door was the back porch where you would head through to get to my bedroom, and then you would walk through my bedroom to get into my sister's room. My cat, who is more obsessed with my sister than me, refused to go into my sister's room. She would hiss and freak out every time I tried to walk her towards the back of the house. Once, one of my friends brought over their dog and I put my cat in my room for safekeeping. I went back there and 15 minutes later, after they left, and the whole room was a mess from her running around and there was piss and shit everywhere. She had never done anything like that before. There was another time when I was lying in my room and my sister was lying in hers and the door between the rooms was slammed shut. She threw open the door and started yelling at me about shutting the room off. When she saw my face, she realized it wasn't me. I slept on the couch and she slept at her boyfriend's house and basically moved in with him after that. In a moment of divine teenage stupidity, my friends and I decided to use an Ouija board. We only used it for a moment or two. We opened the board, got freaked out because we felt like we were being watched, closed it off and put it away. It wasn't a week later that the basement door chain was ripped off and there was gouge marks on the door. A week after that, I went into my sister's room to grab something to take to her and the room was covered in gnats. I couldn't find anything that would cause it. Family issues led me to moving in with my stepfather and little sisters right after. It was only a 2-bedroom house, so I slept in the basement in a little nook and my sister, P, slept on the other side. I would often hear the sounds of footsteps stomping overhead even if I was the only one home. I saw a shadowy figure standing at my dresser that would disappear after I turned the light on. One night after a bonfire, my friend stayed the night. I sat up in bed because someone was standing at the entrance to my little nook. They were dark and I couldn't make out any features. I watched them for a few moments, but they didn't do anything, so I shook her awake. She asked who they were and tried to talk to them, but they didn't respond. So getting freaked out, she turned on the light and the moment she did, they were gone. We walked upstairs to find it was almost 4 a.m. and that everyone was sleeping. Needless to say, we slept on the couch that night and I slept on it pretty often after that. Not long after I graduated, moved into an apartment with my now husband, B, and became pregnant. We would hear doors shutting, which isn't super strange because we lived in an apartment, so obviously you can hear your neighbors. Sometimes I could hear whistling at the back of the apartment, and sometimes I would hear my daughter giggle over the baby monitor when she was learning to talk and talking to someone she called Nana. Once, our burner turned on and burnt breakfast leftovers that had been sitting in a pan. I knew it wasn't us, because we had breakfast at 7 and it was 11 a.m. by the time we realized something was burning. It was turned on all the way. We bought a new house around the time my daughter turned 3, and everything was fine for 2 years, but I recently just had a new baby and things have getting weird again. The first thing I noticed was my first day home alone with the baby. I was sitting on the couch singing to her, and right above me I heard stomping like someone was walking through my attic. Obviously, there's no one up there, so I brushed it off to sleep deprivation. But now my daughter's 4 months old and sleeps way better through the night, so I know I'm not tired. I often hear the sound of doors shutting and toys going off when I'm the only one home with the baby. My dog always runs to check out the noise, so I know it's not just me hearing things. I have stepped outside to have the door shut randomly behind me when the girls are napping. We've had cups fall and break out of the cabinet in the middle of the night. My husband works out of town a lot, so I'm alone at night with the girls and often get the feeling that I'm being watched. I sleep with a pocket knife next to my bed. A family was murdered the night I gave birth to my daughter, like 4 houses down. So that's not too crazy, in my opinion. But what drove me to post this is last night I woke up from a dead sleep because I heard my baby crying. It was followed by a soft hello and shushing noise, to which my baby calmed. I relaxed for a second, thinking my husband was taking care of it. but I felt him shift behind me. I have never bolted out of bed and grabbed that knife so quickly in my life. I threw my door open and my dog was sitting outside of the baby's room, watching the door. The baby was awake in her bedroom, by herself. Her cheeks were still wet from tears, but her pacifier was in her mouth and she was just looking around. She's 4 months. She can't put a pacifier back in her mouth after crying. I checked the house. It was all clear. I didn't sleep the rest of the night and spent it scrolling the internet to find out if anyone else has had this problem. No, my husband doesn't believe anything's happening. He doesn't believe in this kind of stuff. He thinks there was an interference over the baby monitor. It still doesn't explain the pacifier or the stomping or the doors being shut. I just don't know what I should do. Whatever it is doesn't seem to know if it wants to burn my house down or nanny my kids. Or maybe it wants us gone from the picture to have the girls to itself. I don't know what to do or what to think. I'm almost 26 now and this all started when I was 18. Any advice or help would be so amazing and I would be so grateful. I really do not know what to do.